What say you? We take Gohan from Texas.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Gohan, you have the violinist
Hi.
argument for abortion on the mind. And Christy and I,
Yes, sir.
we want to mind meld with you. So tell us your thoughts. Share your thoughts, friend.
Sure. And Mr. Angel, I just want to say I tried speaking to you another time.
Uh-oh.
I was driving though, and the audio was pretty bad. I just want to say you are a pretty nice guy. Christy, I haven't really had a chance to meet you yet, so nice talking to you.
Hey,
Good.
glad to hear from you. Tell me about the violinist argument for abortion. That is not a framework that I'm aware of.
Sure. I'm going to try my best to steelman the violinist argument.
Okay.
It goes something like a secret society who loves violinists. I don't really know why. I don't have anything against violinists, but they love violinists. They know this. Their favorite violinist is sick, and the only way to keep him alive is to kidnap you and strap you to him to keep him alive. You end up in the hospital. You aren't really sure what's going on. The doctor kind of tells you that same stuff and says, all right, you are left with a choice. You can either unstrap yourself and go free, knowing that the violinist will probably die, or you can stay connected and be life support for the violinist for 9 months. So that's pretty much the violinist argument. Mm-hmm. I hope I kind of did a good job of steelmanning it.
Sure. Okay. And so what do you have to say about that? I think a lot of our viewers are familiar with the violinist argument. I don't think the violin part of it's important. It could be any old person. But yes, you find yourself connected to a violinist. You are medically connected to a violinist or someone who is dependent upon your body for their existence. They will likely die or definitely will die if you wish. And all you have to do is stay medically connected to them for 9 months. And I guess the question is it morally wrong for you to disconnect? Or does the violinist have a right to remain connected to you? What's the point about it? Because I know the argument. I've heard it before.
Yes. So, yeah. The point is pretty much is trying to establish a bodily autonomy argument,
sure.
Saying that you have the right through bodily autonomy to not stay connected to the violinist, even if it is the only thing that is keeping him alive.
Yeah, and there's possibly a differentiation to make here between whether or not you have the moral right to disconnect versus do we as a society have the right to criminalize disconnecting and to make this a legal consideration.
Yeah, and I'm not too interested in the legal argument. I'm interested in the morality argument.
Oh, I think you should be interested in the legal argument because we live in a world that is governed by laws. And so the argument comes down to, are you consenting to letting the government tell you exactly when and how you can use your body? Because personally, I'm not an anti-government dude or anything like that. But I don't want the government up in my business. Not like that. And I don't even have a womb.
Yeah. Well, and there's precedent here. And I just want to say that there are other ways that we understand that bodily autonomy outside of the conversation around abortion. I have a grandfather who would have died, who would have been buried and gone 14 years ago if he hadn't received a heart transplant. And yet we do not take unwilling organ donations from corpses. And so if we are following this violinist logic, if we're using that same metaphor, in a lot of ways, there are more rights being afforded to a corpse than to a modern human being who would be gestating a fetus. And that, to me, is incredibly problematic.
And I can get into some of those arguments, but my real purpose of calling was to introduce the reverse violinist argument and see what y'all's response is to that.
Fair.
All right. That's interesting. Go for it.
So I would like to take credit for this, but I cannot. First time I heard it was from a pro-life apologist named Trent Horn, but it goes pretty much like this. You decide to not stay connected, and you get up. All of a sudden, the doctors come in, and they're yelling at you because they forgot to tell you that if you do get up and disconnect yourself, you are now putting your own life at risk. And next thing you know, you drop to the floor and you're unconscious. It turns out that in order for you to stay alive, you also have to be hooked up to the violinist. And now we find out 9 months later, violinist is fully healed, but you still need to stay connected to him. And even though he kind of puts you in the situation to be dependent upon you, is it now okay for the violinist to disconnect from you, which would kill you?
I think you can say if the violinist engineered a circumstance creating a dependency, that there is now a obligation to satisfy that dependency. I mean, does that feel fair, Johnny?
Yeah, this is where we're getting into you had sex, therefore you somehow consented to the consequences of all of what can happen from sex.
Well, let's say that's not true. Let's say the violinist didn't know that would happen. Let's say they didn't know you would be dependent upon him. They just thought it was a great way for him to live, but he didn't know you would be dependent upon him. Just like if you have sex, you don't know if you're going to get pregnant and have somebody dependent upon you. So let's say the violinist didn't even know.
Maybe I'm a little lost, but how about this? And you can say this is a cop-out, but when we incarcerate someone, let's say, into a prison or a jail or something like that, or into an asylum of some kind, a mental health facility, we become, when we take that intentional action to incarcerate someone, we have an obligation that if they're going to remain in jail, in prison, in a hospital of some kind, we now take on a responsibility of maintaining that person by certain standards. Okay, so
I'm agreeable to that so far.
Right, and that is the law. Okay, and anytime there's a violation of that, then that person, the incarcerated individual, has the right to bring a conditions of confinement lawsuit against the governmental entity that has incarcerated them. Okay. I don't know what happens. I would assume that if a person were to, sometimes stores or other businesses have the right to stop someone, detain people for the purposes of bringing a law enforcement in there. In those instances, does that mean that the person who has detained the individual has a responsibility of maintaining certain quality of life while they're in detainment? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for that. So if the violinist has captured you, I would think in some way that violinist would be under some kind of obligation to not detach because they would be killing you as a result. I don't know. This is kind of speculative, and I'm just kind of following the paths around the maze. I'm not entirely sure.
No,
And it does feel increasingly divorced. Like the metaphor seems further and further away from the thing that we're trying to understand. Like I appreciate that we can explore abortion through these thought experiments.
Yeah.
But I don't really see how your reverse violinist coincides with the real world or with conception or some of these other corollaries.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with it. Gohan, hold on. I think I kind of understand. I guess I need to think about it for a while. I'll be honest. But to me, it really comes down to can the government, should the government be able to tell people, you have to house a cluster of cells that will, if everything goes according to the usual, will eventually develop into a viable fetus and eventually a live birth. And I'm not comfortable allowing the government to make that determination. I just don't. It is legal. It's like they say everything is politics. Everything is politics. And so much like, and I talked about this the other day on Matt's show, if your 1-year-old needs a kidney transplant from you, and you're the only donor in any realistic sense to that child, the government does not choose and should not choose to force the parent to give a kidney to that child. We don't expect that. You can live without a kidney, and supposing that the child will die without the kidney, the government doesn't step in on behalf of the 1-year-old and say, parent, we're going to sedate you. We're going to take you into a hospital or something like that. We're going to sedate you. We're going to remove your kidney, and we're going to give that kidney to your child because of reasons, okay? Because we think that it benefits that child. And there's nothing you can say or do about it. We don't do that. But if you rewind the clock by 18 months, there are plenty of people who are fine with saying to a parent, we are going to force you to keep your uterus in a certain state for the rest of the duration of this pregnancy. And there's nothing you can do or say to change that fact. And I'm just not, I just think that's wrong. I do. It's an unfortunate situation well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I could get a quick second to respond, there is a lot, so I'll just try to respond kind of from what I remember. But no, I 100% understand that this may be the first time you've heard that argument. I do not expect a yes or no answer, just something to think about. And I think that's fair. You don't have to give an answer.
Thanks.
Secondly, I'm fine moving on from that analogy to just talking more about generally the difference between abortion and giving away an organ. If we have time, I can get into that. If not, I understand.
Okay, let's go into it a little bit. We only have, I think, 4 minutes left in the regularly scheduled show. But yeah, give us something else to think about. I do appreciate this tone and just the general attitude of a conversation. So many people who call the show are picking a fight, but you just want to have a conversation, and that's what we're here about on Talk Heathen.
Well, like I said, you're one of the nicest guys I've heard on TV, so yeah, no problem. But what I was saying for the difference between abortion and forced organ donation, there is a pretty good difference. And I think you are a lawyer, is that right, Mr. Angel?
Allegedly, yes.
Okay, so you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do not give your kidney to or liver to your kid, or let's just go, something like that, they would not die from you keeping your organs. They would die from kidney failure or liver failure or something like that.
Right.
If you decide to have an abortion, they are directly dying from that abortion. It's not anything that's wrong with them. It's the fact that you are killing them. With an abortion, there's 100%, if it's successful, 100% chance of death. If you do not give a kidney, there's still a small chance of the kid living after that.
I don't accept the use of the word them or kid or some of these things, because when we are talking about an abortion, it's relevant. What are we talking about? The
I'm sorry,
question, the
that's
philosophical question
socialist
of whether or
argument?
not a zygote is a person is one that we can discuss a little bit. And where do we draw that line, and what is a acceptable term, and these
Sure.
different things? But it's really,
I will
really
agree with
significant that we draw that line somewhere.
Yeah, and
And
Christy,
I
good
would
point.
say
And
that
and
the
Gohan, I think
Personhood
I know where you're going with that. I think for me, it's we look at the use of the kidney versus the use of the womb and the entire body system of the mother. We're talking about use,
I'm not
forcing.
I'm
Yeah.
not going there. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just letting you know I'm not going in that direction. I'm just going for the cause of death. The cause of death is not a failure of an organ donation. The cause of death is a failure of an organ. The cause of death in abortion is the abortion. So it's much more direct, and that's why there's a huge difference.
A huge difference or not, we're talking about mandating the use of an organ. That's what it comes down to. You,
No,
you can
it's
focus on
about-
that aspect of it, Gohan. I get it. I know why you do. I get it. But the fact of the matter is, it comes down to surrendering your individual right to use your body as you see fit, and it becomes difficult to talk about when you do talk about things like that. You are ending a life,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Well, how would you remove the fetus from the womb outside of an abortion procedure? You can't teleport
I'm
them.
probably going to make a lot of pro-lifers mad if I say this, but I would say it's okay to remove the fetus if you can manage not to kill it. But if it dies on its own, then the doctor is morally responsible for that death, because he made the decision to place a living organism from a habitable environment to a non-habitable environment. So if the doctor is okay with that, then I think it should be legal for the mom, but then the doctor would have to be morally responsible for moving a living organism from a habitable environment to non-habitable.
All right, go ahead, and I appreciate that position. Real quick, now that you've said that, now we've got two other issues here. On the one hand, you've got Christy's point: is that when do these rights attach to the egg, the fertilized egg, the zygote, the ootid, the fetus, the almost.
I say zest, if that makes it easy. Zygote, embryo, fetus, zest.
Death?
ZEF stands for zygote, embryo, and fetus.
So the rights attach.
Yeah.
When do the rights attach, in your view? I want to know.
Sure. And I think this is a personhood question, not a bodily autonomy question. But I will say rights attach to all human organisms. So once a zygote is formed, after fertilization, it is scientifically a human organism. It's not an organ, it's not tissue, it's a human organism. So I think all human organisms have the same rights.
So as soon as the egg is fertilized, in your view, it's a human organism that gets full human rights under the law.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then once that pregnancy comes to term and it's born, it loses one of its rights. The right to dictate the right to dictate the use of the parent's body.
I'm a parent of a young 5-month-old. I still have to. I'm forced by the government to use my body in ways I may not want to at 3 a.m. in the morning to care for the baby. That right does not go away.
I get you.
That right's afforded to all children.
But you do. You're the person who bore your child. In your view, had an obligation to maintain your child's continued existence within your your partner, but then now
my kid is adopted.
Okay, but at no point does your already born child have a right to any of your organs, right?
I would say, like, if you consider my skin to be an organ, if that's all I have to keep it warm, it has every right to my skin to keep it warm.
I think that's and I do appreciate your tone, Gohan, but I think that's getting cute.
Sure.
And I'm not saying you're being disingenuous or anything like that, but that's being cute. I think the other side of it is, okay, now that I may have lost my train of thought, but I guess now we're looking at a mechanism. Just to talk about your following your thought. It's fine for the mother or the childbearing parent to determine an end to pregnancy. However, it is considered a crime on the part of the doctor to participate that in any way. I think you said something along those lines. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the parent.
Close.
What's that?
I would say pretty close. I would say if the doctor can end the pregnancy in a way that does not kill the fetus, then I'm fine with that. Even if it means a fetus is not naturally born, but forced out by a doctor at 26 weeks, and the fetus can still live. Okay. I'm fine with that. I know, again, most pro-life people say, no, the fetus has to stay inside 9 months until it's naturally born. I don't 100% agree with that.
Okay, so what about the childbearing parent? What about them and do they have a right to? They only have a right to remove the fetus if that fetus will live, in your view. Is that right?
Yes, that goes for both the birth parents and the doctor.
Okay. Well, I think I understand the position there. I still don't agree with it, because I still think you've run into the problem, and I see why you're saying,
fair.
Yeah. And this are the conversations that I have typically with my religious friends, my conscientious, compassionate, humanist religious friends. They take this tone. It's not you're all fire-breathing demons who would want to kill a baby. It's more, I recognize this, I recognize that. I just think that this is more important than that, and this is the other thing. I get it. I just don't. It comes back down to, I do not want the government telling me how I can use my body. Now, a lot of people out there are like, well, they're telling you how to use your body when it comes to masks, right? And I think that's a little bit different. No, I didn't think you were.
Okay.
I didn't think you were.
I was going to say it kind of does already, though, with other examples. The government tells me I'm not allowed to kill Bob down the street or my daughter in my house. Sure. I'm also not allowed to kill a daughter inside my wife's room or somebody else's room. So, like, that's the logical idea. But I do understand why you're saying the government shouldn't tell me what to do with my body. I just only think that applies if you're not killing another human being.
It's what not to do with your body up until the point that what you're doing impacts somebody else's body, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I have the right to do whatever I want, except if I kill somebody, that's violating their right to not be killed. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, again, I know that we are not looking at, you want to focus on the bodily autonomy argument, but I can't help but feel like it's incredibly relevant, nevertheless, to recognize that the right to that connection does not apply when we're talking about a clump of cells. And that's a meaningful piece of this that we have skipped over pretty quickly.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. The bodily autonomy argument assumes personhood, so I 100% agree. We did skip that argument to get to the personhood argument. The bodily autonomy argument. I'm happy having the personhood discussion, but I almost 100% sure we don't have time for that.
We don't.
Yeah, next show for sure.
Gohan, I do like it when you call. I do like it when you call when I can hear you and you're not driving.
Yeah,
and there's a good connection. Let's take a break Let's take a break here. All right, we've got to end the show, but I know you're going to call back. I want you to call back, and I want this conversation to continue, because these are the issues that thoughtful people are debating. Okay, that you will have with people of good conscience. And so it sounds like you are one of those folks. I know we try to be as well. And so let's break now.
Very nice.
Oh, I lost you there. What was that?
No, I was saying you guys are very nice and polite, and it's easy to have a good conversations with people like y'all. So
yeah, well,
nice to
and
hear.
let me invite you to consider calling into the Atheist Experience a little bit later today when Shannon and Jenna will be on the show, and you can actually hear from two women about this issue
Right.
and have that opportunity to explore this, not just with violins and thought experiments, but to actually talk a little bit more personally about some of the meaningful components of this than the three of us guys just sort of rambling on about what we think our rights ought to be.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, and we're going to let you go with that.
I
Go ahead. Go.
I appreciate the offer. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I don't think sex has anything to do with the conversation. But I do appreciate the offer. And I'm sorry I took up so much time, you guys.
No, it was a pleasant conversation. Go ahead. It was great talking with you. We're going to let you go now.